All right, and it says we're live. It's still loading over here, but I think we're live. So there we go. Welcome everyone to another exclusive next level webinar, Leaving California with Scott Fuller. I'm your host for today, Aaron Iler, and joined by my amazing co-host Fletcher Wheaton. Today we are entering the mind of Scott Fuller. We've got an interesting next level backstory for you guys, but before we get into that, Fletcher and Scott, how are we feeling today? What are you looking forward to? And we'll start with Fletcher, then move over to Scott. Just what are you guys looking forward to getting out of today?
What's up, guys? I'm really excited about this one. I got to give a shout out to Nick Fong. Nick did, I believe it might have been a podcast episode with Scott, and that's how I came across him. And I just found it was, it's always something I was paying attention to, was kind of what was going on in California. I really wanted to go to college in California to play soccer, and it just kind of fell through. I really like California, and just kind of seeing taxes and things like that. It's something that I didn't know much about, and through that introduction with Nick, I came across Scott's profile, and we kind of connected, and just been following him ever since on LinkedIn. If you guys are not connected with Scott, do that. He puts out some really good content, and really excited to hear Scott talk about, really, it's kind of made news in the past year or two, maybe, but Scott's been in this game for a minute. You know, it's not like he started this yesterday. So I'm really looking forward to getting some insight into what he's seeing right now.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for having me today. Hopefully I can provide some good insight to the viewers and people who are going to watch it on the recording. Yeah, Nick Fong's a great guy. Met him quite a few years ago, and I think Fletcher, the webinar that you're referring to, we did probably maybe 2.5 years ago. Yeah, like I said, fair game. Ask me any questions, and I'll give you whatever I can. Look forward to it.
Awesome. So before we get any further into it, guys, I just want to let you know that today's webinar is sponsored by Cabo Key Real Estate. Cabo Key Real Estate helps their buyers find the right properties in Mexico through the power of education. That's cabokey.com. We are also sponsored by RaiseMasters, the #1 mastermind for elite capital raisers. To learn more and apply, you can attend the upcoming RaiseMasters webinar by clicking the link in the chat, or if you're with us on the replay, that link is going to be in the show notes as well. Thank you so much to our production team. Couldn't be here without any of you guys. Arena, who's going to be in my typical position, working behind the scenes, throwing some links into the chat for you guys, making sure you're all well taken care of. Fletcher, as always, with your help for the pre-webinar production and promotion. And of course, Adam himself, even though he couldn't be here today, he kind of threw me into the fire a little bit, but hey, what better way to learn and grow than taking uncomfortable action? So if you're here with us live today, hello, and thank you for investing your time with us. Let's get that chat box warmed up a little bit. I know a lot of you have thrown your locations in there already, but if you haven't yet, why don't you throw it in there for us now? Let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're live with us on Facebook, you can do that there as well, and there will be a link provided in there so you can join us here in the main room if you so choose. If you're joining us on the replay, we kindly ask you that you like and subscribe. It helps us with the performance of this presentation, as well as any future next level webinars. And lastly, if you're listening on the Dream Chasers platform, please be sure to share and drop a 5-star rating there, and follow the link to the video in the replay. So with that said, I'm super excited for you guys. I know that you're going to get massive amounts of value from Scott today. Please grab your notepads, and if you can, exit out of any other distractions as we make our way through this presentation. As for our next level backstory, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I met Scott about 15 minutes ago. So that's where it's a little bit interesting and takes things on a bit of a different turn. But Adam was nice enough to give me a little bit of a promotion and let me take this, role for today. So super excited and just really, interested in this new topic that we got going on, and super excited just to hear what Scott has to share with us for today. So Scott, just in doing that, I didn't get to share a little bit about your story, as I don't know it yet, but hey, why don't you share just a little bit about your story with our viewers before we dive into it?
Yeah, easy enough. So let's see, I moved to California 1983. I'm probably going to date myself, but California 1983. I've lived in Sacramento, I've lived in Newport Beach, Anaheim, went to school at Chico State, moved to the Bay Area in '97, and I was a tech guy. I worked for, any of you remember PeopleSoft? They were acquired by Oracle, so I was in technology, worked for IBM. 2001 rolled around. That was kind of the dot-com bust, and decided, you know what, I can't work in corporate America anymore. So decided to switch it up a little bit, got into real estate. So, I guess that's about 20 years that I've been in real estate in California. And, kind of attuned to the topic we're talking about today. Got a little burned out over the years of California. Never thought I would. And so, I was telling Fletcher earlier, took a permanent vacation to Arizona, and no plans to go back to California. So, but I run a couple businesses out of there. One business is leavingthebayarea.com, and also we operate leavingsocal.com. And just a brief background. I mean, we have a lot of people who, we'll get a little bit deeper into this. We have a lot of people who are considering making a move, looking for a lifestyle change. Maybe they're retirees looking for a lower cost of living. Maybe they're, working families, individuals looking for, something a little bit better for their family. And so that's what we do. We help people, make decisions on where to go to, help put together strategies for them, consultation, and then obviously the execution of it, of helping them, in most cases, sell their home in California and be able to purchase somewhere else, and just really everything in between that makes that all happen. So that's the background, Aaron.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to shout out here as we make our way through, guys. Please don't be shy. Get your questions ready and be prepared to shoot them in the Q&A box, or if you're live on the Facebook, shoot them in the comments there, and we'll hopefully get your questions here answered live. And also, if you're on Facebook, please be sure to comment #nextlevel or #replay for us to help us drive some traffic to the webinar. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave it to Fletcher to help Scott dig into his presentation here. And there you go, guys.
Right. So guys, this one's going to be a little bit more of an interactive than a presentation. So feel free to jump in, but we're going to open it up. Scott, I'm just curious, you hear a lot about people leaving California right now. I think it was a big thing with maybe coronavirus and working remotely, things like this. It kind of made the news, but as it seems like you've been doing this for a while. So is this like a decade-long trend before that? Or is this something that's just recently really happening, where people either are moving out of California or have the desire to look elsewhere just due to maybe cost of living, expenses, things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've started to see the trend started probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And that was before anybody was really talking about it. But as my real estate team, we're helping people, sell their home. Obviously, they have to have somewhere to move to. And so that was really one of the reasons why I started these companies, was to provide a solution for people who had, the same types of questions. I need a contact here. How do I get my stuff from point A to point B? How do we set up utilities? So it really came from, 7 or 8 years ago, starting to see that trend just a little bit. I mean, it wasn't a lot, but there was definitely a need for that. And as we got into probably 3 years ago, I mean, obviously pre-COVID, we started to see a lot more people who, for a variety of different reasons, were saying, look, we need to make a move. And so, we started having a lot of those conversations. And when COVID hit, that actually put the brakes on for a lot of people, because people either couldn't travel, were not comfortable traveling, or uncertain what the future held, right? So a lot of people put things on hold for a period of time, understandably so. And, but I think as we got into, probably last summer, a lot of people started circling back around and said, okay, it is what it is. We've got to move on with our life. And so we started to see people put their plans back into action. Well, really at the same time is when you had, a lot of people in tech, corporate America, starting to obviously work from home. They weren't sure if it was going to be a long-term permanent type of an option to work from home or remotely. But as they started to get directives from the companies and saying, hey, I can do this permanently, why am I here? Does that open up an opportunity to get into a market that has a lower cost of living, but be able to continue, my position with my existing company? So that really put an entirely new, spin, a whole new dynamic on the number of people who had the option and were now considering the option of making a move, because now, they've got flexibility, right? They've got the ability to be, fluid, and a lot of cases, go wherever they want to go. So that's where it really started to kick in, even to a higher gear.
Nice. Yeah. So it seems like this hasn't really, I mean, it's been in the process, might have been kind of like stopped a little bit for Corona, but now it's definitely people are looking at options. Aaron, what you got next, man?
Yeah, so just in some preliminary research that I did, and I'm hearing obviously your pre-webinar interviews and just seeing this topic kind of happening, one of the thoughts that kind of came to my mind prior to the presentation, obviously, is just kind of what, with so many people leaving the state, what happens to those that are staying? Like, are there like going to be extreme kind of like tax raises, or are they going to have some sort of like, I feel like in a way there should almost be some sort of incentives to make them stay, but it also at the same time everything points towards things getting worse for those that are choosing to stay. So I was just kind of curious what your thoughts and look was on that.
Well, I think it kind of depends on how you look at it. I mean, obviously, this has been a huge media play for probably the last 2.5 to 3 years now. We're not going to have a shortage of people in California. I mean, the reality is that, if state leaders and local governments want to raise taxes, they're going to continue to do so. And I expect that they're going to continue to do that. People are leaving, due to that taking place. I mean, it's a product of that event happening. But, the reality is, even though California had a, negative net migration, meaning more people left than came in last year, there still are people that are coming into the state. And what we're looking at is we look at the dynamics. Okay, well, who's leaving and who's, staying or who's coming in? Traditionally, we've had a lot of, retirees who are moving out of state. Some of them is because they're upset the way that the state's being run, but some of them are just saying, okay, I've got a lot of equity in my property right now, but I'm on a fixed retirement income, which isn't going to last me very long in California, especially with, costs going up, taxes going up, and things like that. So those are, a lot of those types of people are leaving, but we still have a lot of people coming in. I mean, obviously Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley, it's the largest tech hub in the country, and we don't have anything to say that that's going to change. So there's a lot of, highly paid, highly educated people that are coming into California, coming in specifically to Silicon Valley. And they're coming in, from areas like New York, Chicago, but especially overseas. So we expect, that we're still going to see those positions filled. And we are seeing, more and more tech companies and more companies in general who are looking at other locations to move to, either to build a satellite operation to see how it works out for them, or to move, their headquarters. So obviously we're seeing a lot of those companies, in the last, 6 to 12 months. There's been a lot of press about those companies who are packing up and going. And obviously Austin has been a city who's, certainly benefited, and other areas of Texas have certainly benefited from that. So I don't think it's a situation, it's a big piece of the press's, they want to capture as much as they can because it's newsworthy. But we are starting to see more affluent people who are leaving for financial advantages. So, typically that's going to be they're concerned about their taxes. What's that tax rate going to look like, in California if it continues to go up? And a lot of, red tape on financial transactions, real estate, things like that, could be coming down the pike. And so a lot of people who are very affluent, especially business owners, are concerned on how it's going to impact their business. So even, we look at it and we say, okay, well, the headlines are always, the large companies, right, that move. Charles Schwab, Oracle. We hear these headlines of these large companies. But really the part that's hurting California is the smaller companies that you don't really hear about, because collectively that's a huge part of our economy as well. And, it's my opinion that the state really didn't really acknowledge that there was a potential issue up until recently. And even then they say, well, it's not a problem. We're still the 5th largest economy in the world, right? Speaking of, California. And so there's, I think, a certain level of arrogance within the state that, if you want to leave, leave. Elon Musk, we don't need you. I mean, there's been, people who have said that, in high government levels. So there's a certain level of arrogance that goes along with it, but I don't think that, we're going to have a situation where, at least yet, where we see it's going to have a huge, dramatic impact on the economy. But the more people that go, somebody's got to pay for the resources. Who's it going to be? The people that are staying. 100%.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I did see a question come in. I just want to hop in and get it answered now. Frenchie asks, so what is leaving the Bay Area?
So Frenchie, Leaving the Bay Area is the company that I created to help people who are looking to relocate out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and we'll even call it Northern California, to help them with the process of relocating. So kind of, if you look at corporate America, if you guys are familiar with how corporate America works, let's say if Salesforce, for example, in San Francisco, has an employee in San Francisco that they want to relocate, to their operations in Denver. They pretty much take care of all of it for them, or they outsource a third-party company that takes care of the entire relocation. They make it very simple because, let's face it, moving is a pain in the ass. And for a lot of people, there's a lot of things to consider. It's a very emotional decision. There's a lot involved. So I started leavingthebayarea.com in an effort to help people make that transition very simple.
Nice. That's a pretty good description of what you're doing. And guys, everybody that's on this webinar, please fire some questions in, because I have like 5 wrote down from what you were just saying, Scott. And I know we had discussed some on the pre-call. I really want to get into this one. Recently you mentioned Elon Musk, and that was pretty like a public battle, and then you got people like Joe Rogan who are basically saying, I even see like, and it's not just like, hey, one political side. I've even heard like Bill Maher, who's like very far left, saying, if I'm paying all these taxes, why do I back up and have like a pothole outside of my driveway? So
Yeah.
When these big figures come out and say that, is that just really like noise, or does that actually move the needle? I'm curious about that.
I think it makes it easier for people to think about that decision. It certainly creates a level of awareness for other people, whether if they're affluent or whether they're the average person. I don't think it makes any noise politically to the people running the state. They brush it off and they could care less. But I think for a lot of people, it brings an awareness. And, as you start to hear some of your neighbors talk about, oh, we're making a move out of state. Well, if it's a good friend of yours or a neighbor or a family member, you're like, oh, crap, I'm going to miss you guys. Then you feel like you're kind of left behind. You're thinking, well, geez, is that something we can consider? And of course, it's not for everybody. I mean, look, people stay in California because, in my opinion, it's the most beautiful state that there is. It has so much to offer. So it's got a lot of natural beauty. The climate is absolutely, in my opinion, the best. And, a lot of people are there for employment reasons. And a lot of people are there, for family. And so there's a lot of good reasons for people to stay. But as you start to, day after day, after, you're reading the news and you're seeing that your electrical bill's going up, your water bill's going up. Now we're facing more water shortages. Your taxes are going up. The gas tax in California is going to go up again July 1st. You start to see this compounding, and you have to look at it, and any sane individual is going to look at this and say, wait a second, something is wrong here. Where does this end? And so, how long, can a lot of people continue to, deal with these types of issues, not knowing if they're going to get resolved and not knowing if it's going to get much better. And so a lot of people really are starting to sit down and consider doing something different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Alex, my man from Los Angeles, is chiming in right here. And it's actually a good question. I'm curious for the answer. Do you actually help people? Have you ever helped somebody relocate within the state of California, or is it always a move out of state?
That's a great question, Alex. Yeah, absolutely. We do help people relocate, but stay within the state. I would say that a lot of people are looking to get out of the congested areas. And we've seen that especially, through COVID in San Francisco, right? People are nervous about being in close quarters, tight living quarters, the neighbor next door, shared walls, things like that. That's naturally pushed people into a lot of the suburban areas. And, the benefactors of that have been the Sacramento area and San Francisco. rates of appreciation from a home pricing perspective in the country. And so a lot of people are moving more inland. In a lot of cases, it's drive till you qualify. That's kind of a real estate analogy where you're saying you just keep going east until you can afford it, because obviously the coasts are going to be the most expensive. So people in Los Angeles, a lot of them are, if they're staying in the state, they're moving east. A lot of people, even from Northern California, are going to San Diego. And then a lot of people, especially from Northern Central California, moving up into, kind of the Sacramento area, even all the way up into South Lake Tahoe and the Truckee area, which is a beautiful area. So for some people who want to, just escape the high density areas, but maybe they still have commitments to be able to be within a 2-hour drive to work, right? To report in, a couple times a week. They're sticking around. For people who have, family commitments or elderly parents, that they have to care for, they're still going to stay, relatively close, but they're going to be a little bit farther out. So we do a lot of in-state relocation as well.
Oh,
Yeah, one of
Aaron,
the
you want to
questions
fire the
that-
next one?
Yeah. So one of the questions that just comes to mind for me is kind of like, how did we even get here? Like, does it kind of stem back from policies? Is it just the high living expenses themselves? Is it the high taxes? All of the above? Just kind of like, what really are the factors that have led us to kind of get to this point?
I think it depends on who you ask. I mean, there is some polarization, right, in the state, among party lines. I do think a lot of it has to do with policies that, that have created issues that have to continue to be resolved, and those have continued to build up. So I think that that's, really a big piece of it. But look, I mean, there's a lot of natural disasters and issues that are taking place in California, which, it's debatable if those could have been prevented or at least maintained a little bit better. One of the big issues is obviously fire. We're approaching fire season again, and it seems to get, worse every year. So obviously, that's a problem in the Angeles National Forest. That's a problem even in, the Santa Cruz area, and obviously as we get into, the Lake Tahoe region and especially north of San Francisco. So we've got this, the drought certainly isn't helping. And that's obviously becoming a problem in all of the Southwestern states. But, we have a lot of people who live in Sonoma County and Napa County, which is just north of San Francisco. And, there's a high risk there for fires, as there is in a lot of areas of California. But that also creates an insurability issue, because there's a lot of insurance companies now that don't want to write policies, or they're going to be extremely expensive to be able to write those policies. So people are worried about being able to even insure their home, or where the home be there, after the next, through the next fire season. So I think that there's a lot of natural issues at play as well that, could they have been, prevented? Maybe not. Could they have, could we have lessened the damage on it? Potentially. But, to answer your question, Aaron, this has been building up over a number of years. And like I said, for a lot of people, the question is, how long is your fuse?
100%. No, I agree with you. It all kind of depends how, because obviously it affects each person differently. So it really depends kind of where you sit to which thing truly drives you to consider leaving.
Yeah.
Well, should you want to go ahead and take another one?
Yeah. So Scott, you've answered this one, and I really like the answer. It seems to me like it makes sense if you're a retiree, you've got a lot of equity built up, it's getting more expensive and whatnot. So I want to talk about what type of person is leaving. It's really kind of historically been maybe the retiree, and then you might mention now maybe it could be the middle class. And then I'm actually very interested to see like high net worth individuals. You mentioned that possibly, because to me it seems like for example, a lot of like hedge fund managers in New York are going down to Florida, and it was kind of like you saw it happening, and now I've seen it. It feels like it just kind of accelerated, and more people are doing that. So do you think? Can you just talk about who's moving out? And I know you mentioned high net worth individuals. Do you think like if some people start moving out, others might follow?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about who's moving out, maybe potentially where they're going to. We'll kind of couple that question up. So, as we talked about retirees, a lot of them have, a place that they've always wanted to live, right? Their dream retirement destination. Maybe it's Florida, So for them, it's going to be something that's very, cost effective for their budget. It's going to be something where it's a nice climate, and it's also, 55 plus active adult communities that offer a really cool lifestyle, lots of activities, lots of stuff to do that may not be affordable, in some of the sun cities and some of the different, larger communities within California. So, we're seeing a lot of retirees go to, obviously Florida is a big draw. A lot of people are going to Phoenix, obviously, because it's more cost effective. We've got people going to Las Vegas. So those are probably more of the top destinations. Now we have, still the working families and individuals. And I don't mean this through corporate relocation, right? Because that's been going on forever. A company sends somebody from this city to this city. But for people who are, especially in technology, they've got kind of a tough decision to make because they want to stay, even if they're working remotely with the existing company, they typically want to stay around an area that is tech focused, right? And so you've got these certain hubs that are really surrounded by tech. Seattle's one, Denver's one, we'll call Austin is another. I mean, there's a lot of other cities that have booming tech area, industries, including Phoenix, but those are probably the top ones. The thing that, we're starting to see people run into is, housing prices in Seattle skyrocketed. Prices in, Denver have skyrocketed. The same thing's happening, in Austin. So for them, it's becoming more of a challenge to find where can I find like-minded people that are involved in technology, where it's also going to be more affordable. And a lot of those people are going to Sacramento because, there's a lot of technology and, kind of the Folsom, El Dorado Hills area. So I would say that that's another, group of people. And then when you look at the people who are a little bit higher net worth, they're looking for tax havens, right? So they're looking, what state can I go to where I can, pay as little tax as possible, or be able to take a 51% residency there and maybe stay in California 49%. So it's trying to figure out, what's the strategy working with the financial planner and the CPA? How can I come out ahead on this without, being completely killed by California taxes? And that's why Texas has done so well. And for, retirees and even non-retirees, Florida's done very well. Tennessee is doing very, very well, for that same reason. So, you look at some of these states that have no state income tax, and, other tax advantages, it could be a huge benefit. So, and like you said, we're not just seeing this on the West Coast, right? I mean, we're seeing it, New York, New Jersey, they're flooding into the Carolinas, they're flooding into Florida for the same reason, and even Atlanta.
So one of my questions
no.
that I just kind of came up with, sorry to cut you off there, Fletcher, it's just that I know you mentioned places such as like Seattle and Denver raising their prices, and you just mentioned that people are flooding into the Carolinas and Tennessee and Texas. With that movement, kind of the population's increasing rapidly in all these other places, do you see these issues potentially arising in other places soon as well?
From an affordability standpoint, yeah, absolutely. When prices go up in a lot of these states, and let's say an average price point of maybe $500,000, $400,000 or $500,000. In the last 12 months, it's gone up $100,000. So that certainly impacts affordability, not just for people looking to come in because they're looking for a lower cost of living, but especially for the people who already live there. Price has gone up $100,000 in 12 months. Well, did the corresponding local wages go up enough to support that? No. So it is difficult for the people who are in those areas who, are trying to buy a home, and all of a sudden, they can't afford it. They can't qualify to get a loan, for the amount that the housing prices have gone up. So I think that's obviously a natural phenomenon that's going to continue to occur in a lot of these areas. And we're seeing it in pretty much every major market that's happening. I mean, that's even happening in, Montana, Billings, Bozeman, some of those other areas. We've seen $100,000 price increases, which is just unheard of. But the other piece of it is, for people who are, trying to escape California because of continual increase in taxes and continual increase, in gas prices, everything like that. Well, could that happen, somewhere else? Well, that depends. Who's leading the state?
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. I think like even in Austin, you're hearing the people saying like, "Don't California, my Austin," almost.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like the cry, like, "Hey, we welcome you, we love you, but don't bring the same thing that you're fleeing from." You know, another thing you mentioned, I'm assuming you follow like the net migration numbers, and you've mentioned that. I mean, look, California is an absolutely beautiful place. People will always be there. Has there been like net migration? Have there been more people leaving than arriving in California for years, or is this just like something, you know, that's happening? Like, is the population kind of going down, or is this just something like every some years it'll like ebb and flow, or has it just been like a steady kind of more
Yeah.
people are leaving than are arriving?
I think there's a lot of numbers out there. So, it's hard to say which ones are actually accurate. Census numbers are typically going to say in the last few years, migration into California has slowed quite a bit and migration out has increased. If you look at kind of, one way of tracking it, which isn't really, a scientific official way, but you can look at the cost of getting a U-Haul truck, right? So if you're going to get a U-Haul truck, from let's say San Francisco to Boise, Idaho, you might pay $1,700 or $1,800 to get a truck going there. The same truck coming back is probably $500. Well, why is the difference? Because U-Haul's got to pay to get that truck back because nobody's taking a truck back, right? So, you can look at a lot of these metrics and be able to say that, yeah, the dynamics are changing, but also look at the natural growth rate from what I've read is also decreasing. So is it 100% migration based? Not necessarily. There's, obviously the natural growth rate has decreased as well. I think we got a couple questions.
Yeah, I was just about to pop in here. We got another one from Alex. He asked if there's any resources that go more specific into the numbers on where people are moving to, such as price valuation.
Yeah, there's some good resources out there. What we could do is I've got a few links that I can pass on to you guys, Aaron and Fletcher. And if you wanted to pass those on to Alex and anybody else who's interested, kind of get more of those numbers and more of those metrics.
Yeah, perfect. I'll be happy to. Or, I mean, if you know any of those off the top of your head, we could try to find those and throw them in the chat forum now. Or we could obviously provide those in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I think that one site that stands out is bestplaces.net. And that's by a company called Sperlings, Sperlings, but it's bestplaces.net. So that's one that comes to mind. There's also some websites. I think MarketWatch has one. I don't recall the other ones off the top of my head, but they'll do like cost of living comparisons. You can say, okay, if I'm comparing this city to this city, what's the general cost of living, for goods, services, taxes, different things like that. If you're looking at, if you're looking for tax, there's actually a good one, statetaxindex.org. So if you want to get kind of a comparison of how states rank regarding state income tax, how they tax retirement income, sales tax, different things like that. Statetaxindex.org is a great resource to be able to compare that. Like I said, corporate taxes, individual taxes, sales tax, property tax, and it goes into a couple other metrics as well.
Nice, Alex. We can put those in a chat box for you too, but those all sounded like really good websites to check out. And before I get on to my question, Frenchie is asking, and it seems like he's asking about where people are moving to. So is it true that a lot of these towns, that people are moving out to, are being destabilized with the increase in traffic? I mean, are there any complaints about people moving to some place where it's like, hey, it's almost like this is, the new California? In Phoenix, is it just like people might look down upon somebody moving from out of California? I know that's not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you're always going to have some people that kind of enjoy, the quiet, remote area that they're in, and then you start to see, 200 homes go up next door to you. There is a lot of growth, but I think with most of these cities, it's very sustained growth. I mean, you look at it and you say, there's a housing shortage pretty much in every city across the US right now. With the prices of lumber and other materials going up, I mean, it's gotten pretty out of control. And a lot of that obviously has to do with things being shut down, during COVID. So I think that, you're going to have some people, we call them NIMBYs, not in my backyard. But I think for the most part, the growth that's coming in and the diversification of industry and workforce that it's bringing in is very, very good for a lot of these cities. And Phoenix is included in that list. They have, the right tax plans, they have the right spending plans, they have the right infrastructure to support it, and it's creating a lot more jobs and a lot more opportunity. So in my opinion, it's a good thing as a whole for communities and for cities. Now you're going to have some people that may not agree with that and may say, hey, I don't like change and I want it the way that it was. And unfortunately, that's just, that's the dynamics of, work from home and the dynamics of, prices on the coast going up so much that, people are just looking for other alternatives. And the other thing is, I think that, if we look at kind of the migration patterns of who's coming into, we'll call it Arizona specifically. I mean, this isn't just a California thing, right? There's a lot of people coming in from Washington State. There's people coming in from Texas. There's a lot of people coming in, from Illinois and some other areas. So a lot of people want to say, oh, California's done this, and it's, but that's not really the case. I mean, it's a national migration change that we just probably haven't seen before or haven't seen in a long time. That is, that's very dynamic, and people really just aren't used to.
I got one that's just cropping up, and I think you might be able to say this about most cities, well, a lot of cities, but to me, it seems like, my dad went to Stanford. It's like, I really like cities like Austin that have a lot of universities where you have a lot of younger people coming in. To me, it seems like with housing prices so high, do you see maybe some issue with that? The fact that if housing prices are so high, it's going to price out like the next people coming in? Or do you see any issues with like people not being able to afford, or are they just going to be renting longer? Is there any issue with that? It's not necessarily like a brain drain.
I think, I mean, the reality is I think that our middle class is shrinking, right? It's either you're going up or you're going down, but our middle class is getting smaller. And you bring up a good point. A lot of concerns for people are, especially in the Bay Area, they have kids that are in high school and thinking, okay, kids in high school, they get good grades. They may not be going, to Berkeley or Stanford, schools like that, or, or whatever it is, right? And so there are concerns of, well, once my son or daughter graduates, they're not going to be able to, afford to get a place on their own. So most likely they're either going to be going to a state college, which is great, or a community college, which is great, but they're not going to be able to afford to live on their own. And so that's a huge concern for parents is, and so a lot of those kids are applying to, and they always have, but a lot more are starting to apply to out-of-state schools, even if the parents have to pay an out-of-state tuition, because that gives them at least an opportunity to have their own place, and maybe even, within 5 years or so, a shot at being able to, buy a home. Whereas in a lot of these major metro areas, they would have no opportunity to do that unless if there was, the family helped to fund that, or funds came from a different source.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I got a couple more questions. You mentioned maybe like remote workers leaving California. Let's say like you're at Facebook or something in San Francisco, or Google, or a tech company where technically you could work from anywhere. Are you seeing these companies, if these people have the ability to work remotely, are these companies like threatening that if they do that, that they'll make like 80% of their current salary, since let's say if they're going to like Dallas, the cost of living would be cheaper? Or are they opening the doors to that possibility, or are they trying to retain them and keep them in San Francisco?
I don't know if they're necessarily trying to retain the talent locally in San Francisco. I mean, look, there's some positions that you cannot allow to be working remotely. Let's say if you work in a data center and you physically have to be there. But there's going to be, a lot of positions that can work remotely. And yeah, a lot of companies absolutely are making a cost of living adjustment. They're going to say, hey, look, we're going to give, take maybe, 10% off or whatever that looks like. And I think the employee at that point has to, sit down and kind of do a financial analysis and say, if I'm going to take a 10% cut in my pay, then am I going to realize, more than a 10%, reduction in cost of living, and how does that compare? So a few companies that I've heard of have said, they're allowing to work remotely and keep their same, salary package. And some of them have come out, and I don't think they're saying this publicly necessarily, but from clients we've worked with that we've heard from, they're taking a bit of a cut, but not enough to where it doesn't make sense to do it. They're still looking at it and saying, from a financial standpoint, it still makes sense for me to do this.
And really, one more, I feel like I'm dominating this, but another one is, it's funny because, Scott, I asked you this question before, and it's not like if Tesla says they're leaving, it's not like they're physically picking up stuff and moving shop, right?
Right.
It's like kind of like a slow exodus, but I've seen a lot of like Tesla's moving a factory, CBRE, you can name a lot of these. Are these companies just kind of dipping the toe, or are they like serious about leaving California? Will that have ramifications, or is this just kind of what happens?
I think there's serious ramifications. I mean, here's the reality is when you hear of a company that has decided to move, a large company has decided to move their corporate headquarters to a different state, that's a big deal, right? That's not something that, they just came up with a couple months ago or 6 months ago. I mean, it's something that's been planned for years. So a lot of companies, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to open up a satellite operation in a different state and just kind of test it out, right? What kind of talent, what kind of workforce can we get? How does it work from a tax perspective? How does it work from a revenue perspective? And so they're usually going to start just a little bit and then begin to move slowly before several years later, there's an announcement of a major move. So in some cases, it makes sense for them to move certain departments, divisions into, a satellite operation, and maybe that's it. Maybe they don't have any other plans to move the corporate headquarters. But in a lot of cases, that's a prelude to, testing the waters to see if they could actually move everything. I think that, the media likes to hype it up, and I think there is a reason to do that. There's certainly a reason to talk about it, but I don't see, the leaders in California making any significant changes to policy, or at least telling people, hey, we care about you. We want you to stay, whether that's to residents or whether that's companies. I don't see that changing. And, with that said, there's more resistance, and it just creates more issues. And that's why I think that, we're going to continue to see this trend. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, just so much for your insights, Scott. I do think that a lot of that stuff is very spot on. And I know that's something that we're going to have to get used to just as things are changing, day by day. So, as Adam's been saying a lot recently, we need to figure out how to install some sort of round of applause feature onto these things so we can get you guys the acclaim that you deserve after these presentations. But for the sake of the replay, we do just have a few minutes left here. But I do want to remind everyone that's here live that after we end the recording, we will be doing a breakout session with Scott. So we'll have some VIP interaction for you guys if you want to stick around and get to know him or get any further questions that you might have answered. But until then, if you guys are still more than welcome to throw something in the chat. But I think that's all that Fletcher and I have. in terms of questions. So if there's anything else that you guys can think of, feel free to jump those in. But other than that, in the meantime, Scott, if you could just give the best way for anyone attending live or on the replay to follow up and get in touch with you. And then if we get anything else in the chat, we'll follow up with that.
Yeah, getting in touch with me is real simple. You can just email me, and that email address is Scott, SCOTT, at leavingthebayarea.com.
There you go. And I just put that in the chat for you guys. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Scott. But yeah, I didn't see anything else come in. So I just want to, follow that up with, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for investing your most valuable resource with us today, your time at this next level webinar, Leaving California with Scott Fuller. If you found value in today's message and you're here with us on the replay, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Really helps with the future performance of next level webinars to bring on even more high profile guests, just like Scott here today. Remember, guys, I'm just going to reiterate it one more time to go visit Scott or reach out to Scott at leavingthebayarea.com. And Fletcher, Scott, either one of you guys, do you have any closing remarks before we close it out?
Hey, I just want to say thanks so much, Aaron and Fletcher, for having me on. Hopefully, got some good information out of it, and good to catch up with both you guys.
Fletcher, anything from your end?
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. Learned a ton there, and really look forward to staying in touch going forward. So thank you for your time.
All right. Sounds good, guys.
Yeah, definitely lots of valuable insights, especially from my end. This is something that I wasn't even paying attention to a year ago. So this is all very interesting to me in a sense because it's all kind of new, but it's something that I need to start paying attention to, seeing where the world and the country is going. So just one final reminder for everyone here with us live, if you want to virtually shake Scott's hand, we're going to shift into doing our breakout session now. And final thank yous to our sponsors, Cabo Key Real Estate. Cabo Key Real Estate helps their buyers find the right properties in Mexico through the power of education. And our other sponsor, RaiseMasters, the #1 mastermind for elite capital raisers. Learn more and apply by attending the upcoming RaiseMasters webinar. There's a link to that in the chat, as well as in the show notes if you're here with us on the replay. One big final thank you to our production team, Rena. She's been on putting the links in for us in the chat today. Adam for putting this all together, Fletcher for the promotion, etc. Thank you guys, all you guys over at the Next Level team. And of course, one final thank you to the audience. You guys rock. Thank you for the questions and helping us out today. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Aaron Iler. One final major shout out to my co-host Fletcher Wheaton. Scott Fuller was your rock star of the day. Go connect with him, and guys, remember, and all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.